I guess the cat's gonna be helping us as well.
Welcome back. So today I have a really fun little idea is to make a really quick, kind of a higher coverage homecoming dress. So we're gonna be using this really fun fabric that I have and basically just showing you a really quick and easy way that you could DIY your own high coverage homecoming dress if you so choose. So I saw that it is homecoming season and I saw a lot of different people wearing dresses that they may have been a little bit on the shorter side, maybe a little tighter. Totally fine if that's what you like, but I think that there could be kind of a little bit of a missing market for, you know, people that may want to wear something that is a little higher coverage or just have a little bit more fun with the fabric that they choose for it. And that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be using this material that I got. The cat is having a moment. But I'm going to be using this material like as a remnant, as it didn't really turn out exactly like I thought it was going to. I thought it was just going to be like this magenta polyester. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be perfect for some running shorts. And then I found out that it's like this spandexy, sparkly material. So it was all rolled up at the time. That's why I didn't know it was like that. But we're gonna go ahead and make a dress. Basically, it's going to all rely on measurements. So I'm going to put my phone up in a second and show you kind of like the different measurements you're gonna need to take. So it's very customizable to yourself. There are no pattern pieces needed. And then we'll also talk about how much fabric you're gonna need. For reference, I'm basing this off of probably about a 5'1" to 5'4" dress form in height, and then maybe like between a size 2 and a 6, just because I don't have that much fabric since it is a remnant. But I really wanted to get the idea across in case other people were interested in this type of dress. But I will include, you know, like how much fabric you should probably size up for or even size down for, depending on what your size is. So with that said, before we get started, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment for more content. And now let's get started making your dress. So for this video, you are not going to need a dress form. You will just basically need yourself and your own measurements. I'm going to use a dress form though, so that it's easier to show what type of measurements you're going to need, as well as the fabric I'm using is a little bit smaller than myself, it's most likely not going to fit me. So this way I can make sure that it's something that I can show you and can kind of demonstrate. So the first measurement you're going to want to take is basically from your shoulders on either side. The idea is it's going to be more of like a boat neck top, and I will include an image kind of what I'm thinking of for this, this quick and easy dress. So what you're gonna do is measure across. So on mine, I see it's around 17 inches. So I'm going to do 17 plus 2, so an inch on either side. So for this measurement, I would have the top part is gonna be 19 inches, and it's just gonna be a straight line across. So you would write that down as your shoulder measurement. Next, I am going to kind of go from the shoulder, the base of the top of the shoulder, all the way down to the waist. So on mine, it's gonna be about 16 inches. Then you probably add again those 2 inches, so 18 inches. For your waist, it's wherever the skinniest part on you is, or the smallest part on you is. Everyone is shaped differently, so for where your waist may be, it may not be where this dress form is. Basically, you just want to measure wherever the smallest portion of your body is, and that would be your waist. So then that's going to give us a square piece that is 16. So for this example, that is 18 by 19. Okay, then our last measurement is going to be your hips. So for your hips, what you're going to do is basically measure around. This would be the widest part of your legs. So for mine, this is 36 inches we'll go with, maybe around 35 inches. And then you're gonna divide that in half. So that's gonna be 19, and that's going to give us kind of how wide it needs to be. So again, think of this as just kind of a big rectangle is what we're doing, is cutting out 2 big rectangle pieces. Now, for some of us, our hips may be bigger than our shoulders. Shoulders may be bigger than your hips. If your shoulders are bigger than your hips, you're good to go, and you could actually make this just 2 pieces of fabric, cut it out, and then we'll go on as follows. If your hips are bigger than your shoulders though, like a top portion and a bottom portion, which again, I'll explain all of this as we're going forward. So basically this pattern is going to be a series of 4 rectangles that are cut out. You'll have 2 for the top, 2 for the bottom. If your shoulders are wider than your hips, you could just have kind of combine these 2 so that you would have a front panel and a back panel. But I'm going to go ahead and do kind of a lower panel so that it covers more peoples in case people have wider hips than their shoulders, as well as show some gathering, what you can do to make this really simple. But as you can see, we have two different rectangles. So this is our shoulder measurement as well as the measurement from our shoulders to our waist. And then this is the measurement of our hips. And then there is a fourth measurement down here, which was my waist down to however long I wanted the bottom portion to be. So I just did 24 inches from my waist down. And then basically you'll have these two combined into one, which will show how that works. Now, when you're figuring how much fabric you need, you can take into account these measurements. So you know you're gonna need 2 rectangles for each. So you would add up, if you're using 30-inch wide fabric, you know, maybe about 1.5 yards or 2 yards. If you're using 45-inch fabric, remember that that is going to be a little bit more. So you may only need 1 yard, 1.5 yards of that. So with all of this said, we can now go ahead and start working on cutting out our fabric. So I have my fabric all nicely laid out. One thing to note when you are finding your fabric is to check to see if it has any stretch to it. So this fabric in particular does have stretch one way, but not the other way. So just something to keep in mind. For this pattern, it really won't matter too much. But if you do have that stretch that goes one way versus the other, so like on mine, if you see, it stretches, it has like the way I have it folded, it's like stretching for the width. I'm gonna keep it that way so that it'd be a little bit easier to put on instead of falling down.
So now it's going to be time for me to cut out my 2 rectangles. As you can see, I have this folded over. I guess the cat's going to be helping us as well, but this is going to allow me to get those 2 rectangles for the top, and then I'll repeat the same process for the bottom.
So here are my 2 pieces all cut out. You can see the top, I have both the front and the back rectangle, and then the bottom, I have a very similar structure with 2 different rectangles. Now what we're gonna do is take a rolled hem on the top. So a rolled hem, what that means is you fold over your fabric once, and then you'll fold it over again so that you do not see any of the raw edges. There's multiple different ways you can go about this. With this fabric that I'm using, since it does actually stay pretty well, I probably will be folding it and then folding it again. If you had something like cotton or something that was a little bit more prone to movement, you could definitely press that so that you would press the first fold and then you could then fold it over again to take the final seam. And then on the sides, you're just going to be taking a quick seam up both sides, leaving room for the arms. But here you can see my rolled hem, so you do not see any of those raw edges. And then I repeated this also for that back rectangle. So you'll have those 2 nice raw edges. We use the same color thread as our material, and then we take the seam. So here's what it looks like so far. You can see the top has a really nice structure now, and you do not see any raw edges. So now it's time to work on the sides. So for the sides, before we can even start sewing them together, I did want to make sure that it looked nice and neat and that you didn't have any of this raw edge, especially when you kind of got to the part where we wouldn't be closed. So like where your arm would be going through, so the armhole. So what I ended up doing was I folded over both for the front and the back rectangles, just folded over the fabric slightly so that you would have this nice hem. And then I took a seam all the way down on both sides for both the front and the back. Once I had this complete, as you can see, here's kind of the completed image so far. What we're going to be doing though is now sewing together the shoulder seam so that the shirt doesn't fall off your shoulders when you wear it, as well as starting to sew up the side seams. So for both the side seams and the shoulder seams, you could basically make these as big or as small as you wanted, depending on the style that you were going for. I used an old shirt that I had to see how big or small I really wanted those to be, and then I made sure that I left room for my arms to be able to go through, as well as to make sure that I had enough room for my head to be able to go through. Once I figured that out, I started to pin all of this up. So to do this, you will want to take off the rectangles and then put them right sides together. So here's what my shoulder seams look like. You can see I'm just taking a seam right between where that pin is and the clip. And then I repeated this exact same idea for the side seam. So I left the whole top open so that my arm could go through. And then the bottom, I just have that little bit that I'm going to be sewing up so that this connects both our front and the back at both the shoulders as well as the sides. And I'm just going to be using a straight stitch to complete both of these so that we can kind of have the completed top of our dress done. So here's my completed top so far. You can see that I got all of those seams completed for both the shoulders as well as the sides. There is room for my arms to be able to go through, which is great. And then at the bottom, you can see it kind of comes together. So, you know, definitely you could probably wear a tank top or something underneath if that was a concern. I did try it on and it actually did fit so far, which was exciting. So now it's time to focus on the bottom portion of our dress. So we're going to be using those 2 rectangles we cut out earlier, and the first step that we are going to be doing is basically combining these into one larger rectangle. If you wanted, you definitely could have cut this out as just one piece, but I am going to take that straight seam up the side. So as you can tell, I now have these 2 rectangles that are put together, but what I have to do is do a gathering stitch. So this is because my hips were a little bigger than my shoulders, so I am going to kind of gather this up. And the way you do that is you take 2 basting seams, and those seams are in parallel to each other so they don't cross. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull the strings of one of those seams to start to slowly gather it so that it's the same size as that top portion of our dress already. So this is how we're going to make sure that we have enough room so the fabric will be able to cover our hips. So in this case for me, I needed to make sure that this whole piece would eventually equal 36 inches. So I just very carefully started to pull the fabric and then got it to around 36 inches, which was the size of the top portion of my dress. Once I had that complete, you can see it's starting to sort of gather, has a little bit more flow and movement to it, which is exactly what we want. Now my fabric is very sticky, so I don't need to worry about coming undone. If you have fabric that is a little more slippery, definitely take a seam over that gather. If yours is very similar to mine, what we're going to do is actually sew up the side of our skirt now so that we are able to get it to match the top portion as well. Once you have that seam sewed up on the side, what we can do is actually attach the bottom portion of our skirt that we just did that whole gather on to the top by taking a seam all the way around. So as you can see, I have these matched with the right sides together, and I'm just going through and taking that seam all the way across. This is what the dress looks like at this point. It has those nice gathers on it, but as you could tell, we definitely could make this a lot more form-fitting. And the way I'm going to do that is just making a very simple belt to go around it. You could do this in multiple different ways. You could also add your own belt if you already had one. You did not need to make one. You could do like a braided belt if you had multiple smaller pieces. You could use ribbon. You could really get really creative at this point. We also have to worry about the bottom portion of our dress having some sort of hem. So we're going to do a rolled hem at the bottom is what I'm going to do, so very similar to our top. So basically now we just need to worry about our belt and taking that rolled hem. The cat was a big help in pinning up the belt. So once I got the cat put aside, I was able to lay out my fabric, and for my belt, I kind of wanted to be around 2.5 inches to 3 inches. So I'm just going to cut a strip that is double that in width, so a long rectangle since I do have this extra fabric. And then once I do that, I'm going to cut it out and then fold it over and then pin it up and basically just take a long seam, leaving about an inch, 1.5 inch gap. And then I will turn this right side out. So as you can see, this is what my belt looks like so far. I trimmed off some of this extra material, and I'm going to do that for the rest of this as well, and make sure that I clip the corners. Once all of that is done, I'm able to turn this right side out, and we now have this really pretty belt that was very simple and very easy to do. Now you could go through and top stitch this if you'd like, if you want to make sure that the opening is closed. If you're feeling a little bit more lazy with it, you could definitely just leave it as it is, since it is going to be something tighter on the dress. Next, it was time to do my rolled hem, so very similar to what we did for the boat neck top. I'm just going to fold over my fabric once and then fold it over again, and this will give me that nice rolled hem finish. Some sewing machines do have a rolled hem foot you can use, or if you have a serger, you could definitely do that. I'm going to opt to just use a regular foot and just take a regular rolled hem for this though, as you just use a straight stitch. And here is the completed dress. I absolutely love how it turned out. It was very quick and simple to make. The belt looks great on it and really kind of brings everything together so that you have a little bit more flow and gather in your outfit without having to do that much work to get it. In total, this took about probably 1.5 hours to 2 hours for me, so it was a very quick dress to make, and that was from cutting out the material, doing the measurements, to sewing it all the way up. I think that this is a great option if you're looking for maybe something with a little more higher coverage. You could definitely make this what you want it to be. We have no raw edges, so it should hold up really well too. If you like this video and you want to see more, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you'd like to see next.